next on Secrets of War. In Vietnam, the world's most powerful army struggled to confront an elusive enemy. Vietcong guerrillas who would strike and then vanish in vast tunnel systems or among civilians. Exclusive interviews reveal the secret relationship between Hanoi and the Vietcong. Vietnam, hidden in plain sight, is next on Secrets of War.
No war in history can easily be described in simple black and white terms, and the American war in Vietnam is no exception. With so many conflicting beliefs and arguable facts, perception often created reality. In a long-ago world caught up in the violent struggle between communism and democracy, truth and fact were routinely manipulated and rearranged in the pursuit of national interests. Vietnam was a bloody war, covered by layers of deception, frustration, and arrogance for both the Americans and the Vietnamese. A startling illustration of this deception was one of the best-kept secrets of the war. It concerned a brilliant spin fabricated to conceal the true relationship between the Vietcong National Liberation Front, a supposed insurgent group native to the South, and the North Vietnamese communist leaders in Hanoi.
On the surface, there were two armies, one from the North Vietnam Republic and one from the South Vietnam Liberation Front, and two governments, one from the North and one from the South. But in reality, we accepted that there is only one party, one army, one system of leadership, and one red flag with a yellow star.
In 1960, the Southern Vietcong formed the National Liberation Front, declaring the NLF to be a populist, independent insurgency of South Vietnamese origin, dedicated to a communist revolutionary takeover. The VC, however, were not a popular uprising. Most people in South Vietnam did not support them.
It's a great propaganda victory if you can say that this is an insurgency, this is civil war, this was an uprising of the people in the South. Of course, a lot of those people from the Saigon area had actually lived in the North, had been trained up there, were ideologically correct from the North Vietnamese point of view, and went back down. So it's not really fair to say this was a complete insurgency war.
Armed forces for both North and South were allowed to regroup on either side of the 17th parallel, according to the Geneva Accord ending the French Indochina War in 1954. Many members of the NLF were in fact Southerners who'd regrouped to the north, then secretly returned south as trained North Vietnamese Army personnel.
I belonged to the Vietnam Popular Army operating in the South. Therefore, I had to be regrouped with my party to the north. When the war was over in 1954, I was regrouped to the north and was acting as a deputy political commissar. In 1962, I received the order to move to Zone B, a North Vietnam secret code meaning to infiltrate to South Vietnam.
With its own flag and provisional government, the NLF masqueraded as an independent, indigenous Southern Vietnamese movement, fighting a civil war for independence. By 1964, the reality was that 64,000 NVA cadres were operating in the South.
The North Vietnamese always referred to the South Vietnamese as puppets of the Americans. Well, they could have also called their Vietcong buddies puppets, because it's much truer the Vietcong, the strings were pulled from Hanoi, and the dance of the Vietcong was choreographed in Hanoi.
From 1957 to its formal inception in 1960 to its political and physical disappearance in 1975, the National Liberation Front was a facade, secretly created, supplied, and dominated by Hanoi. Not for the first time, and surely not for the last, Hanoi had turned perception into reality.
The American government knows more than anybody else that the National Liberation Troops were actually North Vietnamese troops. Therefore, when we hear people now say that the Liberation Army came from North Vietnam, we simply laugh, because that is a fact that nobody denies.
Hanoi's ruthless dismissal of all NLF political and military representatives in 1975 has never been admitted inside Vietnam to this day.
All of the South Vietnamese that served with the Viet Cong were very quickly discharged. Some of them put in re-education camps with their South Vietnamese enemies and were done away with. North Vietnamese leaders took control.
As everyone can see, after 1975, the South Vietnam Liberation Front government just disappeared without any fanfare. No one hears about them any longer, and no one sees the flag once representing them. You ask me if this surprises me. Anyone who lives with an oppressive, totalitarian government must not find this surprising. Anything can happen with such a government. This is a tough lesson for me to learn.
The NVA and VC could hide their troops as effectively as they concealed their political objectives. One secret Viet Cong site was a series of underground tunnels located in the province of Cu Chi, about 40 miles northwest of Saigon.
Needless to say, to enter the tunnel was of course not a pleasant thing to do. But there were some conveniences. The tunnel was very long and it had ventilation holes. Upon coming in, we would have an uncomfortable feeling, but after a while, fresh air would bring back the easiness.
The Cu Chi complex was a 155-mile system which honeycombed the area from the Cambodian border to within 22 miles of Saigon. Begun in 1948, these huge interconnected tunnels symbolized the VC's ability to attack and hide at will.
There was no fear if we stayed in the tunnel, even if we could see the enemy clearly. Sometimes we killed them right at the spot, when they were visible through loopholes. In the tunnel, we could always go deeper into the ground, many meters under the surface.
At Cu Chi, there could be 4 to 5 levels to a tunnel complex. Imagine an apartment house, then turn it upside down. Hospitals, orientation centers, briefing areas, arms rooms, supply rooms, barracks, everything was underground. Smoke from cooking fires was even dissipated through special chimneys.
We considered the tunnel as our house, so there was no fear. We could live in there for weeks, and as long as we were there, we believed we would not die. Because not any kind of bomb could reach there. And the same went for enemy soldiers. So there was nothing to worry about.
If Hidden in Plain Sight was to sum up the war, it's a perfect title. I could fly over an area The aircraft would get shot up, and we'd come back around expecting to see Charlie in the open, and we wouldn't, you know? It just rarely happened. They just would drop out of sight. I know we were right over top of them, but hidden in plain sight is what they were.
Despite their ability to hide from their enemies, life in the tunnels and the surrounding countryside was extremely dangerous. The VC were constantly hunted on the ground and from the air.
B-52 bombs plowed up everything in Cu Chi, so it was called Cu Chi Steel Land. The B-52 was very dangerous because it dropped one bomb right after another incessantly. Shelters were collapsed. Tunnels were cut right at the backbone. It was dangerous because it deeply affected the spirits of our men.
The tunnels were virtually impossible to detect unless walked upon. The telltale hollow sound was the only indication of the secret chambers below. For certain American soldiers, known as tunnel rats, following the VC down into the darkness was a frightening and dangerous mission.
I would say American soldiers were very brave. For example, the American force called the tunnel rats hunted VC in the tunnel. If they discovered the tunnel lids, they would not hesitate to enter the tunnel to go after us. So it can be called an overwhelmingly brave action, because to do so, they knew they could face death.
A VC tunnel could be over 15 meters deep and run for miles. These tunnels were protected by booby traps like punji sticks and bouncing Beattie mines. But the best protection for the VC was their ability to hide by blending in with the local populace.
There are several reasons for that. The first is political, that the government in the South was corrupt and the people did not support it. The second was that the government invited the Americans in, and that was seen as being imperialism. And the third, and perhaps most important, was that the will to fight in the North, the whole political machine in the North was designed to liberate the South. And the communist machine at that time was one that was very difficult to stop.
The leaders in Hanoi understood that a political victory did not require winning on the battlefield. While they respected and were wary of American military power, one of their revolutionary principles of war might best describe their ultimate objective against the United States. If the tactics are wrong, but the strategy is right, battles may be lost, but the war will be won.
Lots of people like to say that the United States did not lose the war militarily. We lost the war. We need to remember that. Whether we lost it militarily or not is a subset. We didn't lose any important battles on the battlefield. If you're talking strictly about military forces in combat with one another. But for a long, long time, we thought that was the whole war. And that was a stunningly wrong judgment.
During the Vietnamese New Year on the 30th of January 1968, under the veil of night and in the midst of a tense holiday truce, all hell broke loose from the DMZ in the north to the Mekong Delta in the south. Communist Vietcong forces in South Vietnam had launched a coordinated attack they called General Offensive, General Uprising. Within hours, it engulfed 100 South Vietnamese provincial and district capitals. Americans called it the Tet Offensive. It was a defining moment of the war.